That's a good answer, man. That gratitude thing goes a longer way than people expect it. I'm with you on that one. Matter of fact, that's a better answer than mine. I like that idea. You know, especially dealing with how chaotic the world is. If you're grateful for the little things, and I think we talked about this on the previous podcast. Just the small things, man, that kind of makes life worth living for.
Yeah.
And that gratitude, not always thinking that the world's owed you something or you're defeated by it, but being thankful for the things that you do have, because what else is there? Yeah.
What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do, getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, everybody. This is In Liberty and Health, episode number 187. I swear to God, they just keep flying by. Today, I have Mr. David Lilly with me. I was on his podcast, and I figured that I would return the favor as a fellow artiste, except for a little bit of a heavy-handed musician, and he is what seems like a beautifully talented painter. How you doing today, man?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having on. I appreciate you returning the favor. People like us, we got to stick together, dude. It's a hard world out there. So
yeah, I get frustrated with podcasters who don't lift up other boats, because I truly do believe a rising tide lifts all boats. And if you see another boat drowning, you should probably pick them the fuck up. No, I'm not saying that any of us podcasters are drowning, but if you think there's good people doing good work out there, always give them a little boost.
That's fine. I might be drowning. I don't know if I might actually be happening. No, it's all good. Yeah, man, I'm with that. I think with the podcasting thing, because there's so much content creation, so many people out there. I mean, everybody and their mom's a podcaster now, and so I like having a community of people around. It's been like, well, I'm doing this thing too. You wanna hang out with me while we do the same thing we normally do? Like, yeah, that sounds like a good time. So I'm all for it.
Yeah,
all for it, man.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree. It's kind of cool because it's like I almost have an excuse to talk to awesome people that I actually pretty much regularly keep up with anymore, and also get a chance to kind of pick the brains of people that I really, really admire. And I think as people see throughout this episode, I think yourself is going to be included in there. So I guess first things first, you aren't like explicitly libertarian, although you said you kind of shifted over to being libertarian after kind of learning about Larry Sharpe. We're already a few minutes in. We didn't do like a good introduction. So
dude, that's no, it's perfect, dude. That's a perfect dude. I need no introduction. I am everyone knows who I am. It's cool. No, man, I think I'm a terrible libertarian. I'll say that right off the bat. I haven't been one for very long, and even then I'm not quite sold on all of at least what I can keep up with. I've never been very political, right off the bat. Never really been into politics. I was in I was really into a punk phase, was in a punk band. I say phase. That phase lasted for like 7 years. But in that was like during the George Bush era. So I was anti everything that, anti-flag or Sum 41 or, the Bouncing Souls told me to be against. And it made sense to me. And then it just so happened to bleed into my adult life too. And I was like, well, yeah, the government does kind of suck. No one's come up to me with a good argument. Been like, well, David, here's roads. What are you going to do if there's no government? How are you going to drive your car on a road? And I'm like, that's the argument. Roads. We're going to go with roads. Cool. And so I think just as somebody with a brain, and I say this in jest, I'm joking now. But I get it why people are I get it why libertarian, the party itself, flounders a lot. It's not a lot of people out there who, number one, critically think, but also feel ostracized when it doesn't come to a tribe or a culture, you know, like I don't quite fit into the square. Do I belong if I don't quite fit? And then because you either change and fit into the square, or you find yourself hanging out with people, you know, that might not view everything that you believe, but at least there's particular tenets, at least there's some principal standpoints being like, well, how about we just not burn a compound in Waco? That might be, let's just start there. Let's just not set children on fire. We cool? Like, let's start. And then from there, you kind of move on and start realizing, like, I like the idea that people have guns. I feel safe around guns. I like the fact that people grow their own marijuana. I don't smoke. I don't smoke marijuana. I've tried it. It wasn't for me. But I'm just not in the duty to tell people like, hey, you dirty hippie, stop smoking that Mary Jane because of what? Because of what? Like, and so it's a control thing, man. I think when I talk to libertarians, I think what I find in common. Sorry, my dog is shaking my table.
All right.
What I find in common is they all seem to be responsible for their life, and that seems to be like the grounding principle of the people in whatever this movement is. It just seems like it's people being like, you know, the one thing I don't want is the government making decisions for me, and that requires a lot of responsibility, more than, you know, we're birthed with nowadays. And so that's what I think about libertarian. That's why I found myself, is I was like, I like the people who tend to pick up their own accountability. And so I just wandered my way into this group on accident. So that's my explanation.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty interesting way to get there, because I feel like there's almost two groups of libertarians and people who lean libertarian. Is that you have your group of people who kind of seek libertarianism as a means to, is what some may say is like progressive ends, as in like they're seeking the alleviation of responsibility because they feel in the absence of a state that there's a lot less duty and responsibilities posed on them, as to where some people, perhaps like yourself and myself, where we see this as the ultimate responsibility, but we understand that we believe that we could take that responsibility on and be better stewards of our families and of our communities, absent government intervention. I don't think everybody can necessarily say that for themselves, but I think that's kind of the noble goal that we should all strive for. And I think that's the message that's been missing from libertarianism for quite a while. I feel like Ron Paul touched on it a little bit, but like, I feel like over the last 10 years, kind of like you said, the Libertarian Party and even libertarians as a whole just kind of flubbed around. But this message kind of sells. I mean, it's the rise of Jordan Peterson was telling people to, you know, take responsibility. Now, on your show, we did kind of talk about the different aspects of that and where it kind of goes wrong. But when it comes to taking responsibility for yourself, there's no, you know, that is your duty as a person. So I'm sorry, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah.
I mean, no, I think you're spot on. We can let's just head on down this trail into the weeds. So I think the one thing people think of when you start mentioning like responsibility for yourself, the bootstraps kind of feel, I think people go, well, what about the people who can't? And the libertarian stance has a very good position on that. It's just not widely spoken about, from what I can tell. It's a lot of just volunteerism. And so it's like, well, what about, so I have a family member that it struggles. We'll just say that in the easiest way possible. And the last thing I'm going to do is leave her out in the weeds. I'm just not going to do that. And my fellow neighbor, you know, like, if here's the weird thing, when you don't expect the government to do all the things, it's either going to be you or somebody else to come in and fill in the gap. And everyone goes, well, what about those who can't be responsible for themselves? I'm like, well, it's not as if because we believe in responsibility and accountability that we're not empathetic. Like, we're completely in that volunteerism. I just like the idea that, you know, if my elderly neighbor can't, I live in the Northeast, she can't shovel her driveway. It's not required by me by the point of a gun to shovel her driveway, but I'm going to do it because I'm accountable for me and my family, and she's involved in that because in just proximity alone, and because it's the decent thing to do. I don't need a government to come in and be like, you need to, and I also don't need to be like, well, it's her responsibility, screw her, she'll shovel it on her own, or her grandson will come over, and if he doesn't, he's just lazy. No, it's I like the idea that people live up to their better angels with the freedom to do so. And if the government's always coming in to pick up the upper hand, say if they have a program, the city comes in and shovels the dirt, cool, that's great, taxpayer money. But that relinquishes the responsibility of me actually having the opportunity to be a good person. And I think the more the government's actually gotten involved in social situations, like anything, just all the things, think about every government program. It takes away the responsibility of being like, well, it's my fellow man. Like, I actually care. Yeah. It makes me a bad person because now I don't even consider my neighbors, to hell with them. And so maybe that's leaning to libertarianism, but yeah. I think that has a lot to do with it. And people always like libertarians are always growing their own food and hunting their own animals, and they want all the guns and they just want to be left alone. Sort of. I like being left alone. But when left to my own devices, I'm probably going to help my neighbor out, which is so, it's hysterical to think that without the government, people wouldn't be kind to each other. That whole dude, and I'm ranting now.
That's okay.
And I had a friend on the podcast that'll come out, and we were talking about anarchy, and I'm nervous about anarchy, even coming from a punk rock background. Yeah. Like, I don't know, but the one thing that does reside in the back, being like, sometimes anarchy doesn't mean all the worst things happen. What about the best things that can happen without someone forcing you to do so? And I think there's an aspect of humanity that has been squashed because of the authority that comes in and says, you know what, the one thing we do is make sure you're a good person. Well, it gives me no opportunity to be one charitably on my own. And we've lost that, dude. We've lost that in society. People aren't friendly. I mean, how many videos and I'm on Twitter way too much. How many videos have I seen where someone's getting beat up in the streets and people are just filming? And you're like, well, what's wrong with society? You know what's wrong with society? Because if I defend that person, number one, I might go to jail. Or number two, I might end up on TikTok. Number three, it's not my responsibility. It's the cops. The cops are supposed to solve these problems, right? That's their job. But all of a sudden, we've lost all control of the world around us. And I'm still old school because I'm apparently old. I'm a boomer at heart or something. If I see somebody getting robbed in the street, the last thing I'm going to do is pull my phone out and record it for what followers? Like, what have we done to the generation that we've nerfed the world so hard that all responsibility of society is removed from this generation coming up, that the one thing they think about when someone's being hurt or God forbid, raped, which we saw on a subway in New York, and they watched it. What apocalyptic scenario are we living through now? And I would assume it's because the government's coming in and be like, well, we're the ones to solve these problems, and sit back and maybe film it for your TikTok.
Well, there's a lot of outsourcing going on there, as kind of you were alluding to. So like, over 2020, we were told to outsource our immunity, if you catch my drift, to a certain treatment. Women are told to outsource the fatherhood to the the granddaddy state, and then you outsourcing the protecting of your neighbor to the police rather than doing the good the good work yourself, or outsourcing, like you said, shoveling your neighbor, the little old lady's driveway because plow truck's going to come get it. Well, once again, in the absence of a government, or even just in common parlance where, your day-to-day interactions, you're still going to do the right thing, because I think a majority of people are kind of good people, even if they're not like inherently libertarian or anything like that. Some people are just like, that kind of sucks for that person. And if I'm able and willing to help, I'm going to go help. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of people. And yes, there are bad people out there. Yes, there are evil people. And I think a lot of them tend to gravitate towards positions of power. But that being said, I do think a lot of people do kind of want the best for them and their neighbors. But we've just had so much outsourcing that it's no longer reasonable for people, or at least they don't think it's reasonable, to live up to these standards themselves, when really it's kind of, we have alluded to on your show and now mine, that this is the ideal libertarianism, is being a person of your community and living up to your responsibility and having this duty that you take care of the people around you.
Actually, I think we've actually kind of circled this point to a good extent, that where I legit, because I'm not so much in libertarian circles, like because I'm a terrible one. I don't pay attention to even libertarian Twitter. I know that's a whole thing. I have no idea I don't know who.
You're so much better off. You're much better off. Trust me.
I actually am starting to believe that. I think I'm better off if I just stay off Twitter in general.
Yeah.
But this weird, and this, you brought this up, the idea, you know, people in power, they're a bit psychopathic, like they're very narcissists, but they also wear their intentions on their sleeve, especially when they're like, you know, the only way to solve this housing problem for the homeless is we tax the people and create housing, because that's the only way I would help my homeless man, is if I advocated. Sorry, my dogs are. Hey.
No, it's okay. Actually, I don't even hear them.
Okay, good. Well, then I'll just let them. They're fighting over a bone. Anyway, so the only way that they can conceive, you can see this on people, not to like straight up blanket everyone who thinks this way, but I think it's a very good majority of people look at these problems and go, how do we solve this problem? And the first thing they think, well, we need a government program. And the only reason I think they think that, especially people in political power, is because they were no way were they even inclined to help out their homeless man without it being a program inclined to the government. Because if you really cared about people, you would actually participate that way in your life, instead of trying to, well, I can help that homeless man at the end of my street, but that's not going to help all the homeless. We need a government program. It's like, well, no, if you till this garden, maybe it affects the garden and the garden. And so it's always, you can always tell somebody who's obfuscating their own responsibility by going, well, there's a problem, and the only way it's going to be solved if I get elected and I solve it with the government. And you're like, well, you could have solved this one problem at the end of your street, and you refuse to because you don't even think it's your responsibility. It's not even, you're not empathetic. You just like the idea that there's a virtue that you can get and simultaneously wield power combined. What about helping somebody without it being a TikTok where you get millions of views? Like, what about doing something that's a bit, I don't know, altruistic, without having the clout or this is my bill. Look, it has my name on it. And so every time I hear, and this is a bad habit of mine, every time I hear someone being like, well, this problem be solved with government, like, no, this problem be solved if you got off your quote unquote ass and did something personally. And then maybe the government can come in and take a note from you. But to think that, sorry, I said ass, I don't know if that's okay. But again, I think people show their colors in the way they vote, in the way they argue these problems. Again, feeding the homeless guy at the end of the street is not going to solve homelessness. But neither is the government, because we've seen how well they've done. So I would say maybe not solve the homeless problem, but you can solve one for one guy. Maybe. Yeah. You know, that personal responsibility things, it's a pain in the butt, dude. People don't like it.
Yeah, no, because it really holds up a mirror and lets you know where you are and where you're failing and what you should consider about yourself, which this kind of goes to an even larger point that I've really considered a lot lately, is I see the culture war and even political dialogue kind of get twisted up, and where people really start to go at each other's throats. So I know I'm a little bit of a firebrand on Twitter, but though I think everybody who knows me in person, and
I appreciate that, by the way, just to jump in, you say the things that I would like, I would never tweet that, but I'm like, well, I don't technically disagree. And so I'm that guy in the background being like, I'm not clever. I'm not very clever on Twitter, and that's my threshold for commenting on Twitter. If I think it's funny and it's clever, and I'm just not that quick. And most of the time I'm like, here's a good comment, and the post is like 4 days old. I'm like, dang it. I missed the bandwagon.
What's up, everybody? We're going to take a quick break and tell you about the show's sponsors. We are brought to you by LMNT electrolytes. I've been using this stuff for years, and what I've honestly found is that if I didn't have electrolytes before some kind of cardio, and sometimes even before workouts, that my workout performance, or definitely cardio performance, would suffer greatly. Sodium is responsible for every single movement pretty much in your entire body, and let's say you drink a lot of caffeine like I like to do, then maybe it is a good idea, like I do every single morning, put some LMNT chocolate electrolytes there in your coffee to get a little bit more sodium, potassium, and magnesium in your coffee, so that way whatever diuretic effect you get from the caffeine is pretty much diluted by the fact that you put chocolate salt in it. Also, it tastes really, really good. Get some chocolate cream or hazelnut cream or even coconut, and mix that all up. It tastes really, really good. So yeah, make sure you drop by, go to drinklmnt.com/inlibertyandhealth and pick you up some electrolytes today. All right, guys, thanks.
Yep. It's kind of like flexing a muscle. Like you just kind of over time have to keep working it, and then eventually you kind of get the hang of it. And working in automotive shops now for I can't believe it. Literally yesterday was 10 years that I started at my first dealership making minimum wage. It's like unbelievable to me. So I mean, the sense of humor and like the ball busting was kind of bred into me. But I would like to believe that people who interact with me know that I'm a pretty chill person. I'm not an angry person at all, and I would do just about anything for anybody if they asked sincerely. But the larger point that I think that we're kind of getting to now when it comes to dialogue in general is that when people call somebody a Nazi, when you call this person a demon, when you call them whatever name, really that should always hold up a mirror. Anytime you call somebody a name, you should hold up a mirror and think that crazy woke leftist or this, Bible ranting, gun toting redneck or Nazi or whatever you want to call them, you have to think that you would be that person in a given situation. We all would like to think that we wouldn't be that person that would be getting filmed doing something stupid, but no, that would absolutely be every single one of us if we were given the right circumstances in a certain time. And it is foolish to think that any one of us wouldn't be that person.
Yeah. Actually, I totally agree with that. I think I mean, other than the idea, that stupid cliche of being like, well, there's one finger pointing at you, there's 4 others or 3 others pointing back at, the person pointing the finger. That stupid thing. But there is some truth to that. And the idea of just projection in general. Yeah. And it's a psychological issue, like I don't know if you've heard this, but I've listened to a lot of things where people have been like, one of the first signs that your spouse is cheating is if they start accusing you of cheating out of nowhere. And it's a psychological game that we all play. Like we all do this. Like we're all somewhat paranoid when we know there's something wrong or something we're guilty of. We're somewhat paranoid, so we're always looking for that. Like, oh my, like what if they notice? It's like being perpetually high while the cop walks up. It's like not that again. I was like I don't smoke, but I've been around it quite a bit, so I understand the idea of paranoia, and I think people are susceptible. We're all susceptible to that. Right. And even so I come from a Christian background. That's not even come from. I'm still a Christian. And there's the biblical saying, before you accuse of someone's splinter in their eye, pluck out the plank in your own. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of that is because how in the hell do you see a splinter in theirs if you have a log? Like it's kind of one of those like it's multi-layered. Like number one, be accountable. Don't be a hypocrite. Yeah. And number two, if you're gonna go hard into the paint and be like, this thing is wrong, you better have your cards in order. Because I guarantee, like, ain't nobody getting out of this unscathed. We're all when we get 6 feet in the ground, ain't nobody coming out perfect. Like it's not. And so that idea of a self-righteousness, which is what we see. And again, Christian background. And I just had a podcast with a friend of mine. It's going to come out right around the same time as this one. And we were talking about one of the reasons why I became political in 2018. And I voted for Larry Sharp, and I started looking to the Libertarian Party because I wasn't political at all. Yeah. But I did study because I studied theology and I started studying apologetics. So I got really deep into other religions because I was like, well, if I believe this Jesus thing, I better make sure that there's not a religion out there that's gonna, again, I'm not going to point out splinters if I got a log of my own. So let me study other religions. And people are always like, you shouldn't do that. That's, against the faith. I was like, no. If I believe this is truth, then the truth will withstand anything else. So let me look into all the others. And in doing that taught me to be able to, if truth, it's not my job to hold up truth. Truth will hold up itself. I'm just in it for the ride to see what plays out. And then it wasn't until 2016, which we all know what happened in 2016. Yeah. I started realizing that this whole this whole world that we live in, religion's kind of on the downturn. We've had the four horsemen of atheism, and I was in through all that, and I read all their books and listened to their arguments, and then I noticed that all that shifted. No one talked about religion anymore. I used to bartend, and there was like 3 rules: you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about actually it was just 2. I guess it was just politics and religion. Those are the 2 topics you don't bring up. And no one cared about religion in 2016. They only cared about politics. And I was like, oh, this is the new religion. Like this is the new thing. And we've only seen that accumulate and grow and grow. And now we have literally, I think it's just cults. Like we're just in the world of cultism. And so everybody's got their prophets, their apostates, their creeds, their doctrines, the way you sin, the way you atone. It's all the same, man. It's just a repeat of religions over and over again, and without any kind of grace and mercy and truth that would last. It's fun to see people get really wrapped up in their cult, and not step back and be like, I might disagree with this, but God forbid I bring that up, because then I'm an apostate and I'm kicked out. And then where am I going to find myself? The Libertarian Party? Oh my God. how awful would that be? I'd be politically homeless. Anyway, the long rant, man. Sorry about that.
Oh, dude, you're good. You're good. So a couple friends of mine have converted over to Orthodox Christianity, and I'm an agnostic.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of reading material that I just have not gotten to, unfortunately, yet. But
that's fair.
One of the people that I was talking to about this, I really like the way they presented this, and I didn't expect to take a turn down this alley here with you, but I'm glad we are, because I've been really fascinated by this. Once again, as an agnostic mind, pretty much my entire life, I was never religious. The nuanced view that the Orthodox Christians had kind of presented to me was basically like, it's not, you can sin all week and then go repent, and then, you're good, and then you get into heaven. It's basically the accumulation of all the good you've done in your life versus the accumulation of all the bad you've done in your life, which I think paints a much fuller picture in my mind. And when you die and go to meet the Creator, it's going, the summation, the summarization, whatever the hell the word is, the totality of your life is going to dictate how that feels when you meet your Creator, which is just a very, very fascinating thing to me. And religion was always fascinating in a lot of respects, because like I always found like the diehard atheists very cringy, because they would take everything out of the Bible like word for word and say, oh, there was no Noah's Ark, there was no, just 2 of each. Like, no, that's not the point. You're missing the point. This is a story. This is a theme. You're supposed to take this, and this is supposed to apply to other areas of your life, right? This isn't supposed to be you read this and think that this is reality. You're supposed to get a psychological lesson from some of the texts that are in the Bible. I think that's the significance of it, not the fact that they said that there was a snake in a garden, and then all of a sudden the woman realized she was naked, and now we have Insta thoughts and women twerking on TikTok. That wasn't supposed to be the lesson that we took away, but that's what some people take away. And something that you kind of laid out there earlier is that it's just I always wonder if like religion is just boiling down these psychological phenomena that repeat throughout history, or if it's religion that caused these. Like, was it the chicken or the egg? I don't think we'll ever know, but like, it's fascinating to think about, because once again, the themes in the Bible are just meant to be representative patterns that happen throughout history. At least that's the way that I've interpreted what I know of it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that, especially if you say you're an agnostic. I'm a bit more involved and at least delved in that thing. So I think what you're saying is absolutely true. I think I would go. I personally go a little bit further. Like, sure. I don't mind believing in the idea of the creation of the world. I don't mind believing in the snake in the garden. I had a buddy of mine growing up when I first, not growing up, but when I was in my early 20s, and he's a pastor now of a church, and his big thing was like, I was like, the whole Bible I get all the New Testament stuff, especially the New Testament, but that Old Testament flood thing and like the fire from heaven, I don't see that being like plausible. And I was like, but you get the New Testament, right? It's like, yeah, no, that I do. And I was like, so a guy was raised from the dead, but you don't get the flood? And he was like, Well, yeah, no, it all kind of sounds crazy. So you kind of either you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you kind of sign on to a few other things. And when it comes to, I don't know, I have a few friends that are Orthodox, and I've read some Orthodox things. And what you said is not complete. I'm not going to school you. I'm not trying to let me tell you about Orthodox. I'm not.
Yeah,
that's
I'm coming from a place of complete total ignorance, and I fully admit that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I think I'll try to touch on like a few of the things that you said. I don't know if exactly that's the Orthodox view. There's a lot of when it comes to merit. There's a lot involved. Dude, this is such a deep. You actually like cracked open a giant, deep theological can. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna put the lid back on and go. It's not always about like how good you did and the accumulation, how much evil and how much good, and then it's weighed out in Judgment Day in front of God. There's a lot of whether or not you believe, especially in Orthodox, or at least in Christianity, whether or not you believe that you weren't ever going to be able to be all the way good. That you're more inclined to do more bad than good in general, because good's way harder to do. It's that narrow road versus the wide road, and the wide road leads to hell. The narrow road leads to heaven, because the narrow road's hard to walk down. And so, even at the end of the day of everybody on earth, like, what did you do a lot more good than bad? Like, probably not. I don't think anybody's actually did more good than bad, because good's super difficult, man, and it requires a lot of sacrifice. And so that's where a lot of Jesus stuff comes in, where you go, I don't know if I can equate to weighing my own scales out. And so the whole faith in Christianity is Jesus comes in and he thumbs the scale and goes, don't worry, I took care of it for you. So as long as you believe I'm doing this and you believe in me, and then you follow the way I'm going about it, maybe not eye for an eye, maybe if you lust after your neighbor's wife, then maybe you should consider that as a sin. You don't have to, cheat on your wife, just lusting. Maybe consider this a heart issue, not so much an action issue. Start looking at the heart instead of the action, and I'll tip the scale in your favor. Mm-hmm. That's a stupid Joel Osteen way of describing it, but that's the best I got, man. That's as far. I don't want to jump into this can full fledged, because we'll be here for a while. But yeah, man, I'm with you on that. But yeah, that would be my take.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So I guess we could pivot over to your. I don't know what you do for work, but your time as an artist. This is one other thing that I found very interesting about you, is that for the people watching in video, you have this picture of a plane, and I'm guessing this is probably like more of your style. I don't want to put words to it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually I can. So let me talk. So this guy.
Yeah.
It is one of my styles. I have a few different ones. I can try to do this. Let me do this real quick. So see that Mandalorian up there and that wolf? Mm-hmm. That's another one of my styles. And so I'll move it back. Okay. This plane is, I have a whole, I don't even know why I'm going to this, but either way, you asked. So this guy, I like doing stuff like this, but this painting's called Save Me. It's actually a picture of a particular. I took scripture and a lot of my fine art stuff like this, the not comic book, not Mandalorian, not my. I have a whole comic book stuff that I do, and then I have my fine art stuff, and it's all based off scripture and its interpretation of it. And so this entire thing is built off the idea of being like, well, the world's falling apart, who's going to save me? And so it's kind of a juxtaposition of being like this, whatever. And the whole point, the message behind this painting behind me is, whatever you think is going to save you, probably be your downfall as well. And so everybody's got planes, everybody's got bombs. So as much as you put your salvation in this guy, chances are your defeat's going to come from it too. And so that was the whole message behind that. But yeah, man, I've been doing art for a long time. And that's kind of where I got started. But that's not this is gonna be a Reed Coverdale moment. Mm-hmm. It's not where I make my money, because I'm good, but I ain't that good. Dude, honestly, I'm a subcontractor, so I spent all day laying tile today in a bathroom.
Okay. Yeah, so you could have fooled the fuck out of me if you didn't tell me that right now. I would have had no idea what you do for a living. Like, most people probably don't assume that I'm a mechanic. I just talk about it frequently enough that people know. But yeah, no, I would have never guessed that you lay tile.
It's because I'm really good at that, and also I don't really post. And that was my other thing. Like, I don't. I don't really post on my social medias like, here's the tile, because I'm a subcontractor. I'm not much of a general. I work for general contractors.
Sure.
And so I'm good at what I do, so I keep work up. I mean, that sounds arrogant, but it really is. But for all the fun stuff that I do, and one of the cool things about being, so my subcontract, it's mostly tile trim. I mean, I don't know if anybody cares about this, but I do like carpentry. So it's all finished work most of the time. I can frame a house. My dad was a carpenter and a pastor at the same time. And so I was raised in church and on a job site, which actually really built me, it developed my brain into a really weird function. So you have a bunch of drunks and outlaws. People are in jail during the day. And then I was raised in church at the same time. And so was he. And so he entered me into the job site, which is anything goes. You never know who you're going to meet. And then also having a biblical background at the same time really widened my scale of what is out there. So I actually am very appreciative of being able to experience life that way. And then I end up going into doing bartending, and that's where I developed to just kind of talk to people. I'm a licensed minister. I started a church. I've preached before. I was in a punk band. I've done a bunch of stupid stuff, man. I'm all over the place. This is why I'm not a professional painter, because I got too much stuff. I got a podcast. I got too much stuff going on, man.
No, dude. And I don't know. I admire people like that who can kind of balance a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I do the fitness stuff, geopolitical stuff, obviously music, the podcast, cultural stuff. There's just so much to do and so much to learn. And it's like, I just want to learn all of it. But then, there's some things that, and I don't know if you ever get like this, but like you see something going on or something that interests you, and you're just like, I cannot take that on right now. Like I just have too much other shit bouncing around in my brain right now. I find myself doing that a lot, even with like some political stuff that goes on, like this whole bank failure stuff. I just looked at that. I'm like, I don't know what I can like add or what I can learn from this, but obviously I know the government's involved, and the government more than likely fucked up with low interest rates and the Federal Reserve. Always. But like other than that, I don't think it's my place to sit here and learn about every last little freaking detail.
Yeah, man, I agree with that too. And this is a bit of a critique on my own thing, because, and I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, because we're both podcasters. Well, at least I quotate myself as a podcaster. But yeah, I struggle with the idea of I have too much on my plate. And so actually off to this side, I have my guitar singing on the wall, because I was in bands. I wrote music. I used to play guitar, and then I started painting. I recorded my own music. That's the only reason I know how to do a podcast, is because I knew how to work a soundboard, because I started recording stuff, and I've been always all over the place. And it took me a minute to stop and go, well, do I want to do art? Do I want to paint? Do I want to write music? And I like to write. I write poetry. I like to write books. I'm just literally all over the place. Anything there could have been done, then I do it. And I had to start cutting things out. And music was one of them. I had to kill that golden calf and just be like, I can't. Not golden calf's not the right word. There's a phrase. I think it's in film, or it's in writing, where they call killing. This sounds super awful. Sorry, listener. It's called killing your babies, like killing your children. It's the things that you love that you have to let go of. I mean, like, I just don't have time. I just don't, because if you have too much stuff. But one thing I do want to ask you while I'm here, and I didn't get a chance to ask you while you're on my podcast, is, you ever sit back and go, gun to your head, pick one? You ever think about that? Like, what would be the one thing? You can't do anything else. Can't be a mechanic, can't play guitar. You have to pick one thing you're into. Either you play guitar and no fitness, you just become a slob. You ever think about that? Because I think about that all the time, man. I think like, what if it was just I either write, or I paint, or I do music, or I do podcast? If I had to pick one, and I think it's a litmus test to find out really where your heart is. Do you ever think about that?
No, I've never thought about it, but as soon as you asked that, I knew exactly which one I would pick. And
which one?
Music.
Okay, very nice. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, if I had to guess yours, I'm going to guess art.
Actually, probably should be. No, because it's the only thing I've been somewhat successful with.
Okay.
It would be my inclination. I love doing art, like I love it. But the thing that I'd never put up is I write a lot. Like I spend a lot of time writing.
Okay.
And it's a big project. But problem is, because it's such a sacred cow, a baby to me, that I have a hard time putting it out. Art, I'm like, this guy, that's good enough. Throw that out there. And it happens to be decent enough. But my writing is a struggle of mine. But I think if I was like, you had to do one thing with your life, and I'll tell you why, man. Because even if you think about like this art piece, and you were like, well, that's airplanes with bombs dropping. And then I have like a paragraph. Well, let me tell you what it's about. I could have done that with a page in a book. And so I think personally my heart is leaning towards I just like I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm still struggling with that. Because if they were like gun to your head, what do you want to do? If I picked writer under a bridge for the rest of my life, probably a heroin addict. There's no way I'm getting out of that unscathed and wealthy. There's no way. Maybe with the art.
I always say that, like, if I could do this podcast full time, play music and do some personal training stuff, I would be like the happiest person on the face of the earth. But unfortunately, fixing cars pays the bills. And I've done it now for a decade. So obviously I've climbed the ladder a decent bit. And I'm sure you could probably relate, but you get into like this just right enough spot where like you're making enough money to keep your head above the water. But at the same time, like you can't afford to quit and start all over because you would just get annihilated. Or at least that's the way it is for me.
Yeah, I actually, and I've because my podcast has a lot of, somehow this turned into similar to what mine is, because I talk to a lot of artists. And one of the things that I always have in the back of my head, and especially when young artists come up, and I had a gallery for a little bit of a time, and people come and they bring their art. I always had artists come in, especially if they're younger, or not younger, but newer artists from like 40s, but they just started. And they're like, well, what's your best advice? And one of my best advice was keep your day job. Because the only thing that's going to keep you making things that are genuine is by making sure it's not your full-on paycheck. Same thing with like podcasting. If this was my full-time job, I would have to probably sacrifice a lot of my principles just to make sure that paycheck came in. But because my paycheck comes from tiling or crown molding in your kitchen, I can paint whatever the hell I want. And because I can paint whatever I want and do it with my own freedom, or have any guest I want on the podcast, or, write anything that I want. I'm not a slave to anything because my paycheck comes from. Now I can't tile anything I want. I can't do whatever I want. So I'm utilizing that to fuel my passions, and sometimes duty and passions coexist together. And the more the duty relinquishes the pressure on it, their passions get to thrive. And so I always tell artists, don't quit, because you'll end up doing commissions for paintings that you hate, and you're going to be like, what? And I had someone ask me, they're like, well, I really love, I don't even know what sports team it was. Can you paint me Wrigley Field? I was like, nope, there's no way I'm painting Wrigley Field. It's just, number one, it's not my theme. It's not my style. And it sounds awful. And so I was like, no, I'll continue to put crown molding and tile people's bathrooms before I paint Wrigley. I say that now until I get fired. And then, yeah, sure. Hell yeah, I'll paint Wrigley Field. When do you want it by? Yeah. So, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because like people will ask me about side work on cars, and I'm like, nope, don't want to do it. I want nothing to do with work outside of my, a 7 to 4 job. And when it comes to like music stuff, I don't want to learn Jimmy Buffett. I don't want to fucking learn Tom Petty. I fucking hate Tom Petty. I don't want to learn Miley Cyrus. I'm going to play heavy motherfucking music, and I'm going to fucking love every last little second of it. My singer's awesome. My bass player's awesome. My drummer's awesome. My other guitar player's awesome. And I sing well enough with my singer, and I fucking love it. But I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe we wouldn't have the same drive that we do if that was kind of like our main deal. But I don't know. You also look at some of the greats throughout time. In my mind, Pantera is always like the #1 metal band to ever walk the face of the earth. And it's like those guys made a living from doing that, and they were just untouchable, but maybe that's what separates most bands from other bands, is that, like, there's the guys who understand that this is a job and this is a grind, and then there's the guys who just absolutely love it, and they're just that Pareto principle, that top 1% that just knock it out of the park. And you see this with like Metallica too. I mean, that same deal. They're the biggest fucking band on the face of the planet now. So it's a really, really interesting thing that you kind of brought up there, and I've never considered any of that.
Well, the weird thing is, and this is where I struggle with it, because all of my favorite people who do the things that I enjoy, they're all experts in those things. And you have the whole cliche, good, jack of all trades, master of none. And I worry about that with my own personal life. Like, I'm really good at laying tile, I'm really good at pin crown, I'm really good at customer service. I'm not bad at podcasting. It's probably the least, but I'm really good at art. I'll even say I'm pretty good at art. I'm a decent writer. I can write poetry. I can do whatever I want to do. And I've always said this, and this is something maybe you can give me your insight on. My tile, me like doing the thing, my tile. So I'm in someone's bathroom, I'm remodeling their bathroom. I'm not just doing tile, I'm doing all the things, but I'm remodeling their bathroom. But that requires a heavy hand in customer service. And a lot of times it's like a master bathroom, like it's someone's actual bedroom bathroom. And so I'm in their very intimate space. Like I'm walking through their master bedroom. I'm in their house a lot because these projects last for a decent minute. And so you have to really build up that customer service. You need to be able to talk to people to make them feel safe, make them feel comfortable, make them feel confident in going, okay, so this isn't going to be on whatever contracting nightmares or whatever. I'm not going to end up on a TV show where my whole house floods and the guy runs off with a new truck that he billed me for or something like that. So but that actually plays into public speaking, which I've done before, and relating and having podcast episodes where I talk to strangers, artists from across the world, where I sit down and go, hey, tell me about your craft. I got to be able to keep that going and make them feel comfortable enough to where they share enough, like I have you on and you have me on. Like, we have to be able to communicate these things. Even as a mechanic, the last thing people think about, same with contractors, dude. When I bring my truck into a mechanic, I'm like, they're gonna screw me. I just don't know how much. Like, that's the first. And I would assume they think the same thing for contractors. And so the one thing I want to do is, number one, not screw them, but also make them feel comfortable enough to where they would want to come back. Think, like, this is a comfortable thing that works into my podcasting. But the tile part, the attention to detail, the way the lines line up, the small things, those things are appreciated by the customer. They're also appreciated because I do art. And so same with music, like everything that you do, again, I'm not strictly an artist, where I'm not just like Picasso or whoever is out there nowadays. I'm way more well-rounded, because I've talked to artists before and they're not good at conversing. They're just not good at conversing, dude. They just don't have that personal skill. And so where I've sacrificed on the art thing, maybe I'm not the greatest artist of all time, but I can have a conversation and I can lay tile, and maybe all these things help each other. I might not be the best at that thing, but I am extremely well-rounded, and so are you. And I think that's an underrated thing. Everyone thinks that we live in the day and age of experts. Trust the experts, and these people that are only strictly one faceted. It is so rare to find somebody who's so good at doing multiple things. And those people, those are the nuanced individuals. Those are like the Joe Rogans or whatever. Those are the people that can actually deal with multiple things at once and parse them out and go, well, this helps this, and I can be, this, and I can do this, and I can do all these things. It's just Renaissance men. It's just Renaissance men. That's all it is. And we live in a world that no one does this anymore. No one does multiple things. It's unique in its own right.
Yeah.
It's just unique.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we have so much available to us, but in some ways it's almost like you have paralysis by analysis, where some people just absolutely freeze and they don't know what to do. For me, like I said earlier, I just want to keep doing stuff. Like, I want to play more music. I wish I had more hours in the day, so that way I could spend more time at the gym, and then obviously spend time with my wife and our dogs, and spend time writing music, and then spend more time doing this and mixing it. But like, you only got like 16 to 19 hours in a day that you're awake, and then you have to rest for a little bit. And I mean, if you don't get sufficient sleep, then I mean, there's tons of other health detriments that I'm starting to learn as I get older and older. Unfortunately, that's kind of came as a hard lesson. But it's interesting because it's like I said, there's some people who are just going to remain intellectually lethargic, and there's going to be some people who are going to just go and do all of the things. And I find the people who try and do all the things and can do a lot of them good to be much more interesting than the one-trick ponies. Although, like, not to dog on people who are one-trick ponies per se, but you know, you understand what you're getting with those people. And like you said, I do appreciate the nuance. So like if people read my Twitter, I may be going to people's jugular sometimes when it comes to foreign policy, but you'll never see me not make a point without trying to insert the proper amount of nuance, especially if somebody's confused afterwards. Now, if you're being a dick afterwards, then I'll either block you or I'll, clap back. But I always try to add sufficient nuance so that way my point's clear and you can understand where I'm coming from. And obviously I try to always explain my bias in something so that way you know where I'm coming from, because I think that's important as well. All right, everybody, we're going to take a little break from the show real quick to tell you about the show's sponsors. I am now working with the great Stephen Fox to bring you Fox & Sons coffee. As you can see, I got 2 bags right here, or for those listening, I was holding 2 bags. It is organically roasted up in Michigan. If you're a caffeine addict, much like myself, then head over to foxandsonscoffee.com to get yourself some of their fantastic coffee. They got a light roast, which I'm holding in my hand. They have the Electric Boogaloo blend, which is fantastic as well. I just had it this morning. And if you're like me, you like dark roast coffee, which kicks you right in the freaking face first thing in the morning. They have that for you as well. So head over to foxandsonscoffee.com, use code Kyle, Kyle, to get yourself a little discount. Let them know that I sent you, and get yourself caffeinated, get jacked and tan, and do what you got to do. All right, guys, back to the podcast. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, again, that comes back to a communication skill. And Twitter obviously is not for communicating.
No,
not at all. Like, that's not the platform to communicate on. But it does come to an idea, like, what's the end goal? The end goal is, I mean, at least for, like, I've watched Twitter, like I'm a lurker, and so I just pay attention because you show up on my feed, and I think, oh, like, well, you're not going to gain followers from what you do. What you're doing is just moving the ball in a direction. It's like playing soccer, I guess, is the best thing, or pool or whatever. It's and I like that. And so I'll do the same thing on Twitter. The way I interact on Twitter is definitely not to, dude. So let me tell you about this. And I'll tell you how I failed in this. But the idea is to move the ball, just to let people know in the room, people who read Twitter, go, hey, by the way, you're not the only one who's thinking this, and you might not have the balls to say it. Someone else does, just so you know that you're not alone in this world of crazy, because the lunatics are running the asylum. So at least we have people who are outspoken about it. And I fail at this miserably. And so recently there's a whole thing about, I live in upstate New York. I live in New York. We'll just stay in New York. And Governor Hochul just said something. She put on a thing. It was like recently, it was like last week, and it was a conference, and she was there talking to, like, I don't even remember who it was. And it was, I mean, no one really comments on Governor Hochul. No one really even comments on, if you're from New York, chances are you're not on Twitter unless you're like Brooklyn Dad Defined or whatever. Or AOC, I don't know. Those are me, AOC, and Brooklyn Dad. We're the 3 people in New York that tweet. But she was doing a thing, and everyone was sitting in chairs, and they're all talking, and she was meeting with people and taking pictures, and it was a whole Twitter feed of pictures and her doing whatever. And I just commented under, I was like, not a mask in sight. And I spelled insight wrong on purpose because I'm an idiot. I did it on purpose. I was like, because this makes sense. And I said shameful. I said, not a mask in sight, shameful. And I was like, this is a funny joke. Like 3 people liked it, but then someone liked it and retweeted it, and it was New York State civil rights something. It was like, and they took me serious, and I was like, cool. It was some kind of social justice, New York State social justice company, and they were like, this guy's spot on. There really is no mask in sight. How dare they? And I was like, I'm so bad at Twitter. that they took me seriously, and I misspelled insight. I did not.
One of my favorite tweets that actually got a decent bit of traffic was it was Trump and Fauci talking about lockdowns in 2020, and I just tweeted out. I tweeted out. I said, "Good thing we elected Trump in 2020, or else we would have had lockdowns or something like that." And a whole bunch of people started retweeting it. I'm like, they get my point. And you gotta find a way to be clever. And I am pretty long-winded at times. So like learning to use Twitter in short form was pretty beneficial for me, because I'm able to kind of boil down big ideas into small bite-sized tweets and try to make a point without being long-winded. I think it's really good for that. So when I saw like the 4,000 character limit, I'm like, I think it takes away from Twitter.
Dude, it's actually, and I'll say this back onto the art thing. That wordsmithing is art in itself. Like, and you can see this. Some people on Twitter are very good, whether they're for your side or not. If they can articulate a sentence within inside the characters. And again, even if you max out 140, no one's reading that. If you can do it precisely, and that's like, that is a skill on its own. I've watched people do it. They're very quick and quippy and clever all at once, but their point is made strategically. And I'm like, these people know how to write. And so if you the way you do it, and like, I wish I was as good as all the other people. And I follow all the same people you follow, and some of them are just they're just so good at it. And I'm like, that's a good writer. But that's an art skill of its own. That's how you communicate with one line. It's like being a comedian, being able to do a one-liner and compact all of that into one statement. I love it, and I think that might be why I like Twitter so much, because it's an art form of its own, and to watch people utilize it and do it well, something I admire, and that I would really like to get to. I would love to. Give me a year, man, and I'll be slightly better than I am. Won't be anywhere near you or anybody else, but I'll be closer.
It's just a matter of, kind of working that out, because it took me a while to finally get on the Twitter game and figure out how to kind of get it going. And it's dumb. And I like their algorithm more than I like Facebook's algorithms, because like Facebook algorithms, you're fucked. Like, no matter what you try to do, you will get zero traction on Facebook, especially if you put a link in there. Gone. Nobody sees that. That shit gets buried, and I can't stand that. I want to be respectful of your time. This hour flew right by, man.
Okay,
we'll definitely have to do it again. So a question I ask people, because I'd like to hear their response and kind of see what gives them hope, would be what gives you hope, because I think it's something that we all need, and to hear optimism out of people is greatly appreciated on my end, because not that I'm a negative person, but I like to try to share optimism with people as much as possible.
Oh, so like, what's my white pill?
What's your white pill? What gives you hope?
Beside the Jesus thing, I mean, let's get Jesus out of the way real quick. Step off to the side. I think it's pretty easy. Do you know that saying that, I don't even know who said it, but like, we know they're lying. They know we know they're lying. We know that they know they're lying. That we know that they know that we know they're lying, and they do it anyway. That saying, it's terrifying. It's this. I wish I knew who said it, because either way, I think here's the cool thing about the way, at least my religious beliefs. I believe truth and reality are transcendent. I don't believe in relativism. I don't believe in people having my truth. You have your experiences for sure, but reality exists outside of everybody. There's a set rule and law. Gravity is there. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but there is a right and wrong. There's something transcendent to morality. There's something transcendent to just reality in general. So I believe in absolute truth. I believe there is a truth, and exists beyond our manipulation. Now, we can interpret it, and we can utilize it, we can mold it to whatever we want, and prove our arguments with it, but it still exists outside of us. And I think most people know that. Most people are looking at that. But the thing that's coming against that is a social contagion of saying that, no, that doesn't exist. And whatever we say as a society if we come together and the majority, the populace, say that this is truth, and don't tell me like this is not plagued in every aspect of what we're dealing with now. We don't even know what's up. And Nietzsche talked about this in his poem. Friedrich Nietzsche. He wrote a poem, and he talked about the death of God. And this is a long rant, by the way. I hope you all buckle up. He wrote this poem about the madman. He goes into a church. He has a lantern. He throws a lantern down and says, God is dead and we've killed him. But then he goes into this diatribe about the idea that since God's dead, then we don't know what's up or down. We took a sponge and wiped away the horizon. So we don't know what's up and down. We know left and right. And all we can do now, because there's nothing transcendent, is all we have to do is we have to create games to make things sacred. We have to believe God does exist. It's just of our own creation because we killed him. He's dead. He even says like the church is just a tomb of a thing that's well lost. And because we've killed God, the blood's on our hands. It's our responsibility to be God. Thus, we have to create all things right through our aspect. And he's talking about society. We need to come together as a society because obviously, he was not a Christian by any means. Because God is dead, we don't have him to rely on anymore. We have to create what morality is. And we've seen what has happened since then. It's now all things are mismanaged. They're thrown apart. We don't know who to trust. Do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? Do you get a shot? Do you not get a shot? All the experts are lying or they're just dumb. We don't know who's an expert. We don't know who's right, who's wrong. All we have is our five senses and then our intuition. And so you can tell me my lying eyes are deceiving me, but at least I have an intuition. And that intuition thing is just an idea of transcendent truth, long range short. I think people know what's true and what's not. I mean, despite the complications of whether or not it's religious or secular or political, you know what's right and wrong. And I always bring this up to people, be like, morality, let's take something simple, like what's right and wrong? What's better? Is it better to give a homeless man a sandwich or kick a baby? Should be a pretty easy answer. And if it's a difficult one, then I'm going to keep my kids away from you. But that concept, I think, is lost today. I think people are sitting back going like, well, I know it's truth, but all these other people are telling me that I'm a racist bigot for buying coffee, which we saw today. There's a whole article out saying that buying coffee is racist.
Oh, Jesus.
But I think my white pill is the idea that we all know, we all know the emperor has no clothes. Mm-hmm. We're just waiting on the strong people to stand up and say so. And so my white pill is the idea that I know you know. I know they know, and I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for all the right people to stand up and go, we know this is bullshit. And now we all have the courage to say so. And I have a podcast. I make art and I'm doing my own participation, but my white pill is the idea that there's the squeaky wheel has gotten all the grease, and we all know that this thing is circling the drain. And there's a few of us going like, we saw this and we were kind enough to let you run with whatever theme you thought. And now that we have drag shows for kids, we're all stepping back going like, we let the dog run on the leash for long enough. Now we need to pull back to what really is true. This is not good. And I think everyone knows that. I think we have truth. I think people who are inclined to the idea of at least we all know we all know the truth. Mm-hmm. And that's my white pill is I know that you know. And if you don't know, there's plenty of other people out there that know the truth. Like it's pretty obvious. It's transcendent. It's not something you can manipulate. So that long story, that's my white pill, dude. Truth is there. Just people are choosing to ignore it.
Nice.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
What's your white pill? Can I ask you what your white pill is?
I would say life. I know that's a very, very generic answer, but
that's garbage. Give me something better.
No. I'll elaborate. There's a line in the Shadows Fall song, and I think about it all the time. There's a song called "Still I Rise" off of Shadows Falls 2009 album. Retribution, and the track's called Still I Rise. And yeah, the line I always remember from that song is the greatest gift that we have is the life that we're given. And I think about that all the time. The fact that I get to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and then go cook my breakfast and then go to work and then come home to my wife and my dogs after, you know, an extremely brutal workout where I hate my life there at the very, very low end of leg pressing 500 pounds and putting it back up, and then standing up and, you know, feeling the blood, you know, work its way all throughout my body, and then laying my head on the pillow at night and just experiencing life, you know. I was talking to somebody, the podcast is going to release tomorrow, and by the time this comes out, it'll be 2 days prior. I remember the moment right before I got married, counting the seagulls on the beach before I was allowed to turn around to see my wife, or my soon-to-be wife, and just thinking about the moments in life that I'm most grateful for, and the fact that I can continue to make moments like that, and that there will be many more moments like that for me, for you, and for everybody else. I think that's what we should focus on, and then how we can cultivate communities that bring out the best in everybody. I know that sounds pretty hoity-toity and like pie in the sky, but it's a noble goal, and I think it's one worth pursuing, and that's what gives me hope.
That's a good answer, man. That gratitude thing goes a longer way than people expect it. I'm with you on that one. Matter of fact, that's a better answer than mine. I like that idea. You know, especially dealing with how chaotic the world is. If you're grateful for the little things, it's and I think we talked about this on the previous podcast. Just the small things, man, that kind of makes life worth living for. You know?
Yeah.
And that gratitude. Not always thinking that, you know, the world's owed you something or you're defeated by it, but being thankful for the things that you do have, because, you know, what else is there? Yeah. What else is there? Good call. Good answer, man. Better than mine. It's fine. I'm stealing yours from here on out. I'm gonna be like, you know what? No one's told me this, but you know, gratitude really is the white.
Well, you were able to boil it down to one word rather than a large. I don't want to say unhinged, but a large, you know, kind of hoity-toity rant.
Hoity-toity, dude. I said a transcendent truth from an omniscient God. How do you get more hoity-toity than that?
Yeah, dude, fair enough. David, where can everybody find you? What do you got cool coming up? And any plugs that you want to give before we close her out?
Yeah, man, I'll throw my tags out there. If you want to follow me on Twitter and get my my best effort, it's Pardonable Art. Same on Instagram. You can see my art at Pardonable Art. And if you want to follow me on my podcast, you can go to YouTube at Pardon Will, or look up Pardonable Podcast. Same on Rumble, and obviously Apple, Spotify, all that good jazz. I'm everywhere. But yeah, you can hear me talk to artists about art. And I mean, I've ventured off now. I've had Kyle on. You gotta go listen to that podcast. It's great. Great time. And so yeah, man, that's it. You follow me, and that's it.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you hanging out to chat. Like I said, we'll definitely have to do it again sometime. And
dude,
if you don't got anything else, we'll close her out.
Let's close it out, man. I'm good to go. I think we're good.
Hell yeah, man.